It's time for ER 101 with expert guests provided by the American College of Emergency Physicians. Here's Dr. Leigh Vinocur.
Hi, and welcome back to ER 101. We are talking about the Boston Marathon bombings. By all accounts, the first responders were there, the police were there. Everybody did their part to minimize the casualties and the mortality and get people quickly and safely to hospitals. But some of the people that did a lot of the work were actually bystanders, good Samaritans that were there and sprang into action along with our first responders. So what would you do in a situation like that? Hopefully you won't have to experience anything like that, but I want to welcome my next guest, an ER doc, Dr. Eric Lavonas. He's an emergency physician at Denver Health Medical Center in Denver, Colorado. He's the associate director of the Rocky Mountain Poison and Drug Center. He's an expert in toxicology, but also a spokesperson for the American College of Emergency Physicians. And welcome, Dr. Lavonas. Thanks for being here. And we want to talk a little bit about basic first aid, what people should know if, God forbid, they're in that situation and what they can do to help.
Surely. So I think that part of the reason the Boston situation went as well as it did was because of an army of people who did simple things right. The first thing, if you find yourself in a situation like this, the first thing you want to do is look and say, am I in danger, and is this other person here in danger? So if you have an active shooter situation or a fire or choking smoke or something that's immediately life-threatening, your first priority is to get out. If there are 100 victims, you don't want to be the 101st. If you can rescue somebody and drag that person out of danger with you, that's even better. But your first priority is to avoid becoming an additional victim.
Yeah, that's true, because we don't think of it. Everybody, you would think, wants to help during that period, but then you're just one more person that the first responders have to worry about. And if you get hurt in that situation, then that's one more person that they have to take care of. So.
Exactly, and that's common sense, but it just takes 1 second to stop and think about that. After that, your next priority, don't worry about being perfect. Worry about doing one thing that's good and doing it. So the one thing that anyone can do is help control active external bleeding. If you can just put pressure on a bleeding wound, that will almost always make the bleeding subside, if not stop. You can put pressure on using a cloth, that's even better. If that doesn't work, the recommendation is switched back to using tourniquets. You want to use something wide, like a belt, or a wide piece of cloth. Try to avoid using a rope or a string to put constriction around an extremity that has severe bleeding that's not stopping any other way.
So you tell people, and there were incidents. One gentleman was reunited in the hospital, which was very nice, with a runner, or I guess it was a bystander, who was bleeding so bad that this guy took the shirt off his back. He was the runner, right? And he took the shirt off his back. So using a cloth and really putting a lot of pressure to stop it. But then if you can't, there were amputations from the blast itself. Where if you think about, the arteries and everything all exposed. So people use things like belts, right, to actually put a tourniquet on.
Yes. It's not the job of a first aid responder to save the limb. It's the job of a first aid responder to save the life. So We would only put a tourniquet on if there was bleeding that looked massive to you.
Right. Okay, so, and then that is a good question, because, people talk about tourniquets and we hear about it, and yet in medical school we talk it's the last resort. But I guess these were pretty dire circumstances for some of these people, too.
Yes, and even the military, who, military medical folks think about this for a living, has switched back to use of tourniquets when there's life-threatening limb bleeding that won't stop with direct pressure. So if you need to put on a tourniquet, don't overthink it. Do something good. It's better than doing nothing.
Okay, and you mentioned you want to use something wide so that it's not further cutting into the tissue and it's easy to to get off when they get to the hospital and things like that? Is that why you said something wide?
Yes, use what you've got, but a tie, a sock, a shirt that's been turned around into a cloth. Something like that would be better than a narrow rope or a string.
Okay. All right. So, and what other things? Because it's interesting, and then I want to talk a little bit about, people think, okay, I didn't take first aid, I didn't take CPR, but there was a recent push for this hands-only CPR that doesn't necessarily, in a situation like this, doesn't necessarily need special type of training. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Surely. We can teach your audience how to do CPR in the next 15 seconds. Are you ready?
Do you have a good singing voice? Because I heard you have to sing. I heard you have to sing to do this, Dr. Lavonas. I'm not a very good singer.
I'm
but
not
go
going
ahead.
to sing Staying Alive. I have a lousy falsetto, but I will tell your audience, push hard. And if you have someone who is unconscious and you think that person's heart is not beating, push hard and fast on the center of the chest, as fast as you can until help arrives.
Okay. And you are supposed to...
And if you want to sing Staying Alive to yourself, then that's even so much the better.
Okay. So the point is, just to explain, so the song from the Bee Gees, Staying Alive, aproposly named, has a beat that if you sing it or would clap your hands to the beat, every beat you could make a compression, and that's the right number of compressions, correct?
Exactly right.
We should have had Sonar pull up the music for us. But so if you could sing it in your head, Staying Alive, or tap it on your foot, that's how many compressions you should make. So it's as simple as that. Even if you've never taken a course and someone collapses right in front of you, you can start to do CPR. Hands only, no breathing into them, correct?
Not needed anymore. No. And in case you forget, we don't want you doing Mamma Mia or one of the other Bee Gees songs. You can just push hard and fast on the center of the desk, as hard and fast as you can until help arrives.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, we wouldn't want some slow ballad tune to be going through your head, but I think that's pretty good. Just recently, the American Heart Association did come out with those recommendations because people were a little bit loath to, give mouth to somebody that they didn't know. So a lot of times, or they felt like, what if they were not doing the CPR correctly? And studies have shown that if you just do it, even without training ahead of time, you can save someone's life. The key is to keep the blood pumping through their heart, even if you're not breathing into their mouth, correct?
Exactly. It is much better to do something good than to do nothing perfectly.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. And then what else can people do? A lot of airports and stadiums and things, this was outside, but they have those defibrillators, right? And even if you don't know anything, you can do something with a defibrillator, right?
That's right. The automatic defibrillators now have a computer in them that will decide if the person needs a shock. So this is very simple. If you see someone unconscious, first call 911. Next, if there's a defibrillator there, get it. Put the pads on the patient, and there's a button there that will say analyze. It's the biggest button on the machine. Might be the only button on the machine. So push that button, and the machine will do the rest. If the machine decides the patient needs a shock, it will give a shock. If the machine says the patient won't benefit from a shock, it won't give one.
And it also will tell you, stand back if it's going to give a shock. It is really pretty foolproof, these defibrillators.
That's right. The technology is fantastic, but it relies on a person to go get the machine and hook it up to the patient. They've made it super simple.
Well, that's great advice. There are apps for your phone from the American Red Cross, and if you have the time sometime, you can even take an online course for the American Red Cross. So it's a good way to stay well and healthy and protect those around you.